Well, good afternoon, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar on how to do an observation, how to walk through it. My name's Jan Rusick. I will be running this afternoon, and what we're going to talk about is how to do an end-to-end observation if you are an observer. I don't generally enable audio, so please use your little question and answer area, and I will try to answer questions as I see them come up. So presumably you are all observers, and so what we're going to talk about are the screens that you have and how you to do observations and how you interact with other staff members who are being observed. So I'm actually logged on in two places, in one place as an observer and in another place as an observee. And so in our, now, so this is the observee screen. So as an observer, you're going to go to the staff to evaluate screen, and you are going to start your evaluation process, your observation process on that screen. Now the folks who will appear on that screen are linked to you. Now you are not necessarily going to be assigned to do all their observations, but these are people who you are allowed to see. So presumably if you're a supervisor, there are people in your department. If you're a principal, there's people in your building, your school. And if you are a superintendent or higher up in the organization, you may be seeing everyone in the entire school district. So this screen gives you the ability to focus in on the category, on your location, on the evaluation category of folks you want to look at. Maybe you want to do things by tenure status or a specific person, and if you just hit search, it simply lists everyone who is linked to you. Now, the system can be configured to operate in a wide variety of ways. In my demo here, observers are allowed to assign themselves to observations. So each one of these boxes is a separate observation, or in this case, a summative meeting at the end of the year. And you may be assigned by your administrators, or you may be in a place where you assign yourself as you can do observations. So I don't know, which one it is. If you are allowed to assign yourself, you'll see the Assign Self button, and if you're not allowed to assign yourself, it will simply not be there. Now, this screen gives you an overall view of all of the folks, again, assigned to you and the status of their observations. So you can see which ones are assigned to people, which ones are not assigned, and you will be able to see which ones have been completed as well. On the right-hand side here is a button that says number of observations. So in our case, it's 0 observations. For most people, 3 observations. That represents the number of observations for that individual that are assigned to you. It's not the overall number of observations they have, obviously, but it's the number assigned right now to you. So I'm going to go into, I have a pet person here who we're going to use as our observee, and that is Tyann Anderson. So I'm going to go into Tyann Anderson. Now you'll notice also that there's SGO PDF indicators. If the teacher has started their SGOs, these buttons will appear so that you can see the SGO, what's in the SGO so far. So she hasn't filled out very much, just created it. But at this point, from this screen, you'll be able to see what's in the SGOs. We're not going to concentrate on SGOs this afternoon. So when you are ready to go into work with an individual, you're going to click the observation button, and you'll be on a screen that represents that one individual, tells you their tenure status and evaluation category, and shows you the slots. I call these slots, that the evaluation events that have been pre-created for this person for the entire school year. So in our demo here, there's an announced observation called short 1 and unannounced called short 2. Teacher does a separate self-assessment. There's a short 3. Domain 4 is done separately, and at the end of the year there's a teacher summative. So there's a total of 6 evaluation events. None of them have been assigned to anyone yet. And what we're going to do is we're going to work through the announced observation. So that'll let us see all the piece parts, the end-to-end piece parts of the announced observation. Now, on this column, it says, is this visible to the observed? So each one of these evaluation events will be represented to the person being observed, to, in this case, Tyann, as a panel on their My Evaluation screen. So they have a My Evaluation screen, and there'll be a panel. And where the green check mark shows, that observations panel is already visible on Tyann Anderson's My Evaluation screen. And where there is a red indicator, it means the panel is not yet visible. So I'm going to go look here at Tyann's. I'm logged in as Tyann over here in this other browser. And we have 2 panels that are currently available. Short Observation 1 and the Teacher Self-Assessment. Now, I want to point out that the panels have columns. And the columns that show up are based on what is supposed to happen in that evaluation event. So the first one is representing an announced conference, an announced observation. So there's a pre-conference component of that, there's the actual observation, and there's a post-conference. Teacher self-assessment is the staff member self-assessing on the rubric. So there is no pre-conference. There's actually no post-conference configured for that. There's only the self-assessment. Now, when you do things during the actual observation, it is going to cause different elements to appear to the observed staff member, to Tyann. Okay. So that's what we're going to walk through, what you do and what the observed staff member sees. And we're basically going to use this first one. So end to end, there's a pre-conference, the actual observation, and a post-conference. And they have a document log, which is always available. And the document log, in Danielson, that would be called the evidence, the artifacts, and they can upload items. It's just uploading files. They can upload items, and you can upload items. Okay. So let's go back. So as an observer, the first thing that you need to do to be able to do the observation is to be assigned to it. Now, someone else could assign you, or you can assign yourself. In my demo here, I'm going to assign myself. We're on Tyann's specific screen, so each row here represents a different observation evaluation event or slot. So when I click Assign Self, this is going to be expanded into all the piece parts of the observation. So that thin row became this row. So I have a pre-conference column, the observation column, the post-conference column where I can see reports, and then an actions column. On the left here, it's telling me the name of the description of the event, who's been assigned, that's me, is it visible to the observed staff member, its assigned length, and the workflow that we're going to use to manage this process. Now, the workflow is what specifies all these piece parts. So this is pre-configured, which workflow and thus what piece parts are going to be part of the end-to-end observation. And everything actually can be configured. So this is all built based on the descriptions of your district. So since this is an announced observation, the first part is the pre-conference. If during the pre-conference or before the pre-conference, the staff member has to fill in a form, on the schedule pop-up for the pre-conference, we're going to ask for 2 dates. The first date at the top here is the date that they will see the form that they have to fill in. It's the day the form becomes available. And the bottom date is the actual appointment time for the pre-conference. So in order for them to see the form, you have to make it visible as of a certain date. So anytime after that date, it'll be visible. And the pre-conference, you're scheduling for a specific date and time. And you can send an email. And if you want to add text to the email, this little box lets you add text to the email that gets sent. So I'm going to save this now, and that's going to turn on the pre-conference form as well as sending a calendar appointment to the observed person. So now I'm going to go be the observed person. So here's what it's looked like before. And when I refresh the screen, now I have information in the pre-conference area. So it tells me that there's a form I have to fill in, and it tells me when the conference is going to be. Now I also got email, and email has a calendar appointment in it. So the observed staff member can then fill this in, and when they're filling it in, if they hit save, it stores their information, and you can actually see what they're typing in there. You can't edit it, but you can see what they're typing in there. Now, at some point, they're going to formally submit that form. So they have the opportunity to work on it over time. And then at some point, they submit it. Email gets sent to you, and they get locked out. So you can, your view doesn't change. You can also click on print form, same information but in a nicer format for printing. And now it tells you that it was submitted. The form was submitted to you. So that's the pre-conference. Now, other than the form, saying when it was scheduled, sending the email, the actual conference itself isn't represented on here anywhere other than the calendar appointment. So you hold the conference, and then at some later point, obviously, you're going to do the observation. And there's a schedule button for the observation, and that lets you schedule it. You can also adjust it from just the length if you want to at that time. And you also can add co-observers. Now, co-observers are in the room with you. They're physically in the room. They can score it separately, but their score does not count and at the moment does not even get shown to the observed person. But they're there kind of to make sure they know what they're doing. So you can add them. Now you can either schedule it at this date and time, and this is calendar. You can select a different day and time, or you can start your observation right now. So you don't have to schedule it beforehand, although since this is an announced observation, if you schedule it, we of course send an email. Now, if you schedule it, you decide you want to change the schedule, there is a pencil here with an eraser. If you click that, it asks you if you want to unschedule it, and then you can start the process over again. So when you're ready to observe, you're going to hit Observe Now or hit Observe, and we'll launch into the observation screens. So these are screens that we expect you to use either when you're in the classroom or after you've been in the classroom to capture the evidence that you saw there, to score a rubric if that's appropriate. Now, not everybody's methodologies are the same. So some people will only have a form. Some people will have a rubric in a form. Some people have 4 screens, where the info screen is capturing a bit of additional information. So I'm going to work through the first 3 here. The notes screen is the capture of evidence screen, the evidentiary notes. Now, there's options on this screen. So one of the options has to do with how we're capturing the text. So if it's set to single line of text, then as you enter the line of text, you can hit return or enter, and we're going to generate a new note. We also have the option of having multiple lines of text, or even if you pick HTML, a little editor. HTML is developer speak for editor. And when either you have multiple lines of text or you have the little editor, you're going to have to hit Add Note. There isn't any way to hit Enter, just Enter at that point. Because all Enter does in this case is add new line characters, skip to the next line. So you can switch back and forth between those schemes as often as you want. So if you want to capture a little more text, you can switch to multi-line. If you want to just type in one line and hit Enter, you can leave it at single line. We also have a setting for capturing date and time. So the default is to have real-time time stamping, and you can see that we're capturing up to the minute time. If you turn off time stamping, then we're pretty much not doing anything by time anymore. We're doing it by the order in which you do it. I don't know what happened there. So okay. And then finally, you can also move the line from the bottom of the screen to the top of the screen. so the field that you're entering the notes in. So either you're pushing notes down or you're pushing notes up when you change the position of the field. And you can, during a session, you can change that as much as you want. When you're done capturing evidentiary notes, or even during the process, you can map those notes to the parts of the rubric that are turned on for this observation. So when the observation is set up, the school is making decisions based on what domains you want to include in this observation. And so not all the domains need be included in every observation. If they're not included, you can't map to them. So in this case, we'll just pick off a couple of places on the rubric where we want to attach this note, and the note is displayed up there. Now if I just say map, I'm going to go back out to the set of notes. I can say map and next, and that's going to map that and then bring up the next note. So it's going to save my mappings and then bring up the very next one. And I can do that and step through my list of notes. If I just say map, I store it and I go back out. And then I have to hit another map button to map another field. I can also delete this one and go on to the next one. So if I look at it and I think, I don't want that one anymore, I can delete it and move along. Or I can just cancel to go back. And I can delete things out here. So again, these are the evidentiary notes. When it's time to score the rubric, I can go to the rubric screen. Now if I have tied notes to a row on the rubric, they will show up here. It's going to tell me what's mapped. I can also add an evidentiary note right from there. Then depending on how your rubric is set up, a number of things can be true. First of all, you're going to be able to score the rubric by selecting one cell in each row. You can also select all of the free cells in a column by clicking the top all button in the column. Now that's not going to deselect in any row that that already had a selection. So it's not going to override an existing selection. But it will score any previously unscored rows on that page. So every row can have one selected column, basically. And if you have critical attributes turned on in every cell, then you'll be able to bring them up in every cell. You may only have critical attributes turned on in the cell that you selected. In that case, you'll only see the attributes for that cell and you won't see buttons in the other cells. You may not have critical attributes in the cells at all. You may have an attributes button over here on the left side if you have row attributes. And again, you may not have any attributes. It's sort of up to how your district wants the rubric to work. Now, in addition to the evidentiary notes on the left side, you also have a explanatory note for every row in the rubric. And that's this little blue button that comes on in the selected cell. And you can use this to put in little explanations, and then it's going to show that there's text in there. It'll show the first couple of words of whatever text you put in there. Now, interestingly enough, if you deselect the selected row and select another selected column, another column in that row, the comment is still there. So it's a row comment, and if you want to delete it, you actually have to physically delete it. Otherwise, it's going to stick around. So you have an explanatory comment for every row. You also have an explanatory comment at the page level, and that's going to be one per page. You will have the ability to look at the rubric report and also the observation report. So as you're working on the rubric. And there's page controls up here. You can skip from page to page if your rubric has multiple pages. Now, you may be allowed to skip scoring certain rows, and we have the ability to give you a not applicable button, and there's one for each row that works just like a regular selector. And also there is a not applicable column, so you can fill all the rows on the page with not applicable. And then there's a master not applicable button that lets you fill all the rest of the unscored rows on every page of the rubric. So it's a one-click not applicable fill for the whole rubric, or what's left of it. And here you can skip from page to page. So we have 3 out of 4 domains turned on right now. So that's the rubric page. You may also have text fields that appear at the bottom of the page. I don't really have them turned on here, but they may appear at the bottom. So your district is going to tell you exactly what your rubric will look like. There are a lot of different parameters to the way rubric's set up. Some districts have it set up so that the rubric goes with the highest value column on the left, and some put the highest value column on the right. So again, there's a lot of things that are up to your district. None of it's wrong. It's just the way different districts operate. You may, in fact, you probably will also have an observation form that you can fill in. And these are a regular form. You would, oops, my keyboard drives me nuts. Come on, keyboard. Come on. Good. And then we can save that, and we can also bring it up formatted to print. A couple of districts also have an info screen where they're capturing additional fields. Typically, this is not going to be turned on. If it is, you would just put information in there covering whatever grade, subject, and who's your supervisor. So you can just save that information. When you're done doing the observation, whichever of these tabs you have, and they're all optional. You maybe only have a form to fill in. Maybe you only have a rubric to score. You're going to click on the person's name to get back to their Manage screen. And now some things have changed. You'll see if you've scored a rubric, if you've done scoring, the score will be there. You'll be able to click to bring up the narrative form if there's a narrative form. And you can go back into the observation screens as often as you want as you're collecting information and scoring the rubric and filling in the form. So until you're happy with it, you can just go in there as often as you want. What you don't want to do before you're happy with it is sign it. So that's a no-no. Now, at this point, the observed person does not see any of your notes or information. They might, if it's an announced observation, they may see the schedule, but that's all they'll see. You have to explicitly share the observation reports with them. Oh no. So when you're ready to share the observation reports with them, you're going to go to the edit screen on the far right. So in the actions column, there's an edit button. And if they don't even see the panel, so if the panel doesn't even appear for them yet, you're going to click in the Show on Observed Staff's Employee Portal. That turns the panel on. And then to publish the observation report to the teacher, you again need to pick a date. So on that date, the observation form and the rubric report, these two reports that you have access to over here, will show up for the person you observed. So now if I click, those two reports show up. So I can see how you scored the rubric as the observed staff member. And I also can see the actual observation report. And that's really going to depend on how your district wants to do things. There are lots of different observation reports, so I'm not going to talk about that specifically. So the person you're interacting with is mostly filling in forms and viewing reports. That's pretty much their role here. Now afterwards, if you're having a post-conference, you must schedule it exactly like the pre-conference. So if there's a form associated with the post-conference, you're going to get 2 date fields. If there's no form associated with it, you're only going to have the one date where the conference itself is held. So if there is a post-conference form, you need to set a date in the post-conference schedule pop-up in order for the teacher to see it. And so then it'll tell you when it was scheduled for and when they got the form. From their point of view, and there's email sent for all of this. From their point of view, the form fill is going to appear. They're going to get an email with a calendar appointment, and then they can fill in whatever the post-conference form is. And they can save it and then separately submit it. And what I will see here, what you're going to see here, is it'll tell you that it was submitted. And of course you can look at it. Slow. So those are the piece parts, the individual piece parts. Now when you're ready to share this, like I said, you pick a date on the edit screen. It'll be shared. You can have the post-conference. And at some point, you're going to want to sign off. So you'll click the sign button. And you'll put in your PIN in that you set up with your signature, and we will sign the observation with your signature. It's not the best signature, but it is a signature. And what they may have rebuttal comments. So there may be a button that says response. They may be given that choice. That's a local configuration, so it may be turned off. So some districts allow a formal rebuttal like this to go in, and some do not. Finally, your staff member is going to sign, at some point, sign the observation, and it will be finalized. And when it's finalized, so now what you see here is also the fact that it's signed, and people, this indicator comes on up here, little green indicator may at some point change its color, and it says that it was completed, and it tells you at what point it was completed. And of course, there's also the artifact log, which you can look at, and actually you can continue to add things to the artifact log. So that's an end-to-end observation. Now the difference between an announced and an unannounced typically doesn't have a pre-conference. Depending on what's being observed, how it's being observed, you may or may not have a post-conference. And email is not going to be sent to the person that you're observing, at least not till the post-conference. That doesn't mean that they won't have this panel available to them. The panels might be turned on at the beginning of the year, which is what some districts are doing. There's no secret to the teacher how many times they're going to be observed. So the panel just lets them know, yeah, it's coming at some point. The panel doesn't have any date information on there. It will have the name of the observer once an observer is assigned, but it doesn't have any information that betrays when you're going to come into the classroom. So the panel may be there. If the panel is not there, so how do you know whether a panel is there or not there? Well, get the controls out of the way again. If the panel is not there, this check mark will be red. So here we have one where it's red. So I'm going to assign myself to that. So simply assigning myself to it, which will expand that into the piece parts of that one, does not turn it on for the teacher. If it's off, what does turn it on for the teacher is when you go into the edit screen. Oops. And click this show on, oh, come on, show on the observed staff's portal. And that turns it on. It just turns the panel on. So if I click that, now that a new panel has been turned on. All right. So if you decide, you assign it to yourself and then you decide you want to get rid of it, there's a tool here called Clear. And if you clear it and it makes you type in the word clear, it removes all the work you've done and all your results, and it sets it back to the unassigned state. So it's gone. It's not assigned to anyone. So that is end-to-end observing with one event. Also on this screen, dedicated to one person, this is one teacher screen. You can also bring up their SGOs, whether or not they've been signed off and committed to. And you can look at their New Jersey Smart information if you're allowed to do that. So as you go through the year, these scores will be filled out. And at the end of the year, you may be allowed to see their summative report, and that will be available there as well. So this is kind of a one-stop shop screen for an individual teacher. So you're with somebody you're observing, or an individual staff member, it doesn't have to be a teacher, that you're observing. Everything's on this one screen. All their observations, all the piece parts of the observations that are accessible from here, as well as their SGOs, their NJ Smart information. So everything in one place. Now, if you make a mistake in the sense that you sign it prematurely, you can't unsign it. You have to go to the process administrator, your local in-district process administrator, who can unsign it and give it back to you so you can complete it. So that is pretty much all I have for this afternoon. I didn't see any questions come up, so I don't know if anybody was confused by any of that. But that's all I have. I want to wish you guys a wonderful weekend, and if you have any questions afterwards, please put in a JIRA. I will leave the line open for a minute or two if anyone has questions. If I don't see questions coming up, I will end the webinar.